Hello, Dr. Dan Miller. You're on the 250 River with Dr. Dan. It's September 19th, 2024. September 19th, 250 years ago, takes us to 1774. You're at episode 3 of my podcast on the 250 River with Dr. Dan. And remember what we're doing? We're going back 250 years for stories about real world people, real world stuff that we can carry with us as we get closer to the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence in the summer of 2026. We're a ways from there yet. But today we've got some interesting stuff for you. Thanks for tuning in. Today's episode 3, as I said, brought to you by Dr. John Boyd. Maybe not a doctor, let's drop the DR on that. But brought to you by John Boyd in his medicinal store in Baltimore, in the colony of Maryland, where, quote, a fresh and very general assortment, close quote, of the latest drugs are just in from London, carried here by the British frigate Nellie. That's John Boyd's medicinal store in downtown Baltimore to get the treatment for what ails you. Of course, that is a semi-fictitious, no, not even semi, that's a 99% truthful advertisement from September 19th, 1774, the 1% fiction, which is they're not my sponsor. So thank you for enduring that with me, and thank you again for being here with me. We're going to take just a few minutes to put forth a case. Remember, I started our series a couple weeks ago. I was making the case for a new national holiday. Today I'd like to make the case for a new family holiday, which is the first fire of early fall. The first campfire, the first fire in a fireplace, but the first fire of early fall. That ought to be a family holiday. And if you decide to do it, I want you to do it not in my honor, but in honor of a person I'd like to introduce to you today from 250 years ago, who's enjoying the first fire of his early fall. He's 27-year-old Philip Vickers Fithian. Philip is, as I said, approaching his late 20s. He's a school teacher. His students are in-home. It's an in-home school at the plantation of enslaver Robert Carter III in the colony of Virginia. Philip is the teacher of the white children in the household and a few white neighbor children from around the environs. Philip says today in his diary that it's a fine, wonderful fire, the first fire of early fall. And he starts to stare into that fire. And as he stares into it, thoughts begin to form into his mind. I'm a campfire guy, I'm a fireplace guy, I'm a fire pit guy, so I understand that feeling of really any fire when you look into it, but again, especially that first fire of early fall. And Philip's mind starts to drift as he looks into the flames. He starts to drift back just a few years. Remember I said he's 27. Just a few years he drifts back in his mind to his college days. We know it as Princeton University. He knew it as the College of New Jersey. And it's ragged and it's jagged and it's got full of loose ends, those college days of his, not that long ago. But as he's staring into that fire, the first fire of early fall, it all starts to make sense. It all starts to kind of come together into a substantial reason, positive reason, a foundation for who he is today, September 19th, 250 years ago. It all starts to make sense staring into that first fire of early fall. Now, he could think about a lot of things, right? I'm a big one on the word choice. He could be choosing to think about a lot of different things as he's looking into the flames on September 19th. He could think about his students, who drive him crazy. He loves them, but they drive him crazy. He could be thinking about the crisis, the colonial imperial crisis that's flowing out of Boston and Massachusetts. He's aware of that, very aware of it. He could be thinking about Virginia's role in that. He's aware of that, very aware of it. He could be thinking about the Congress that's meeting now for week 2 in Philadelphia, where Virginia has sent delegates, George Washington among them. He knows about that too. He could be thinking about any of those things, but he's not. He's drifting back just a few years to the College of New Jersey And what seemed senseless by and large then now makes nothing but sense and perfect sense to him by and large right now, staring into the first fire of an early fall. You know, I got to thinking, I'm watching our time here, got to thinking about there's fires all over the place. 250 years ago on September 19th, there's fires outside of the wigwams in an Oneida native village in the central portions of the colony of New York. They're drying fish, they're drying deer hides through the heat off of those fires. There's fires in a boiling tar in a pot, iron kettle, in a small village in the colony of Connecticut. They're going to pour that hot tar over the skin of a guy who just refuses to agree with the colonial protests. He just refuses, and by God, this hot tar ought to take care of that refusal. So there's fire of a different form on top of a wick and a candlestick. In Boston, where a British Army officer is writing a letter to a good acquaintance of his. Not a friend, I'd say, but a very, very good acquaintance. He's known for 20 years. They met each other 20 years ago when they both had on a uniform. He was George Washington. Remember, he's one of those delegates now in Philadelphia. And Robert Mackenzie, who's now a lieutenant in a British military unit stationed in Boston, trying to keep the peace, trying to represent the force and the power and the authority of the British government there. And Mackenzie writes a letter to his longtime acquaintance, George Washington, thinking back 20 years to the Washington he knew in 1755 and 1756 down in Virginia when they were fighting on the same side in the French and Indian War. He knew a Washington then who would have done doggone near anything to get official rank as a British officer in the regular army of the Redcoats. He would have done darn near anything because that was his life's ambition as he knew life at that point. So that's the Washington Robert Mackenzie knew. That's the Washington he believes he's writing to this letter of advice on September 19th, 1774. From his post that doesn't look very promising there on Boston Common in the middle of a fire storm to a great degree. So I invite you to read all of these stories in their entirety, if you will, on my website, Americanism Redux, today's entry, September 19th, 1774. And I encourage you to remember Philip Vickers Fithian if you decide to take me up on my advice and my request and start a new family holiday, a new family observance of the first fire of early fall. I'm Dan Miller. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next week on Americanism Redux and the 250 River with Dr. Dan.